Everybody agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, he's probably having an affair somewhere, and then like he bumped.
Um, Would, and not that you would do this as a practice, but certainly watching this film and focusing on this particular character. If something were to happen or develop along the lines of extramarital affair for you, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how much would you be surprised?
7.
7?
Mhm.
Anybody else?
I would be surprised.
Yeah.
I'd be a little bit less surprised.
Yeah.
Because like they're older and they're really working quite a bit. Like, I think after kids leave until that last life, thing you do something to increase about going with parents. But, that's tough.
Anybody else? So I think one of the initial observations about the sheriff, certainly the sheriff's relationship with his wife, is very Stephen King-esque, right? So the author is trying to really arrive at a setting where, as a viewer, you were kind of drawn in to this very quaint town. And who best to be the face of that town than the constable and the sheriff? And this is by design, right? So at least on the surface, this is intended to provide us a sense of stability and love that is really the sine qua non of a Stephen King Americana small town. And we kind of get the gist from your observation of this character and this character's relationship with his wife and vice versa, and then extenders, even the town itself. And because of that, there is an enormous rabbit hole that we might actually leap into if we have time to. All right. So it's very interesting that you picked up on that with the sheriff, you observe it. There's the observation with the way he interacted with his wife. That was absolutely intended by the author. And boy, does it serve as a foundational element of something that might result in something much, much, much more significant down the line to be determined. We'll see where this conversation goes. And that's my teaser. Other observations. Misery.
I was very impressed by Paul throughout pretty much the whole movie. I think maybe it was like because it was a continuous crisis situation, but he seemed kind of not to sink into hopelessness or at any point really, and I think it was like an interesting kind of like not really dramatic irony, but I think they didn't intentionally clue in the viewers to where his head was at any point. It was kind of just as per your interpretation of watching what he did. And he was very convincing, I think, to, like in his like deception of her and the long game that he was playing. I was impressed. I think American references too that he grew up like in a like low SES or like dangerous setting. That he like really supposed to get all right to survive. I don't know what happened with his wife, but she mentioned and the daughter. I guess I feel like he's just really good surviving even before this. I think there is kind of like past experience. Like that.
Yeah, I agree. So whether we take the past experience or to the extent that past experience was actually to directly impact the current experience, that which we're actually watching. Let's talk about Paul and Paul's hypothalamus. Because I think the character himself mirrors what's going on in the central nervous system. And I think you could take this in two parts. Even though obviously it's something a bit more complicated than that. There's the initial part where I think there's enough distraction that he doesn't see what's right in front of him. Right, very similar to us. And then once there's an imminent threat, boy, does that become focused. And we then see this resilient side of things come through, and perhaps that which draws from prior experiences. But he doesn't get himself into this problem unless he's distracted and doesn't see what is right on him. And that is, he's being stalked, and there's a plan in place, and he's going to be victimized. He is. When he is victimized, there's a sense of resilience, just like the hypothalamic function, fight or flight. He's fighting. Right, they're not physical, although there are elements of that as well. But I do think the character development of one Paul Sheldon mirrors the hypothalamus from a state of quiescence to one in which there's any threat from someone. We can't tell. I don't know if this is not going to show up exam, but when an individual is faced with an imminent threat, when there's that fight, flight, or freeze response, these slow oscillations to the hypothalamic structure is what is usually seen on EEG. So I can come up and test me now, but when you see slow oscillations, that could be a best fun for you. What else would fall into?
It's like very calculated in what he was like doing. I really got it. And yeah, I think like it hurts all the things maybe not her name. But like he would always almost like try to be one step ahead of her, like with the paper and be like, oh yeah, I need more paper. Or like when he wanted to finish the book and like he was very believable the whole time, which I thought was like impressive. Because like she like kind of felt like, oh, this guy really does care about me and all these things. That's nice to do that.
At some point, again, during this one response, he comes to the conclusion that by reasoning with her, he's going to meet with a dead end who has already met the dead end. That there's nothing further in the process. He cannot appeal to her reasonable nature that this is wrong and he's letting afraid. And I think one of the turning points of this movie is when it's raining and she appears very smart and he realizes he's not getting out of there. Right? We're left up to her. So because she, I think, realizes that she's in love with an idealized version, and now has met the real person, and that there's no real relationship to be further developed. And I think at that point she really decided it was to be a murder suicide, and I think he recognizes that. He does have this strange relationship with his daughter. That's teased out a little bit more as well. But that's something too that I know our clients too, as we begin to analyze. So we are analyzing the character development of the main character here, or one of the main characters, not Paul.
I was curious what Reverend Louis used the hotel early too. He said to me that it was good here with it, and he was thinking when he saw that film and I think to himself, maybe I should turn around, maybe I should have someone else. And he kept going, so I'm curious, and we didn't really talk about it in the movie, maybe not, but what led to the punishment of his previous position.
Yeah, I don't know. Certainly, I mean, the blizzard came in, and maybe he was trying to get out early, realizing that he didn't. He got snowed into that lodge for maybe more than a week. And again, he's struck his Manhattan base, so there might be other things that are early in the schedule. Clearly, his agent was looking for him. Who knows what he missed, that what money was he missing out on in terms of prior engagements? That's certainly something to consider. But he was trying to beat the storm. He certainly wasn't going down in that speed limit. He's a little faster than I think those of us who perhaps are not from Colorado, and he's not. Would have been well. So there's something. There was a haste behind that.
I think maybe his experience with his daughter also contributed to his close relationship with his agent as well. It seemed like she was one of the constant things in his life. And when she said that he usually called me for like 2 days before she tried the hotel, I think because he didn't really have anyone else in his life who was that consistent, he relied on her to do that sort of for her. And that's why she picked up on him not finding that way. But
Interesting. Maybe trust issues.
yeah.
And maybe trust issues were at the core of why he was straight from his daughter, but clearly he has trust his agent.
Even like to like his character of Jerome filling her off in there, and really like basically couldn't happen, and he was like over in childbirth. It's really interesting, right? Because this is like a character like he's had throughout his career and supporting him, and ultimately he like has this base for the character. He doesn't feel like it's sort of not the real. I guess I'm not really as a like relationship with women. I kind of like seen it different levels in the movie. Agent, his daughter, and the character too.
Yeah. So, what might else be contributing to his strange relationship with his daughter? So let's forget about his age just for a second. Focus on the daughter. If we were to have some time that they fall Kelvin during the psychiatric evaluation, are there some questions like this?
What's the relationship with your mother?
Yeah, yeah. And what might be something, especially now reading his books, same way the sheriff did, the reps would not surprise us if we got back as an answer. Yeah, I killed her father. But it might be helpful on them. So something to consider too.
I think like the relationship with his agent being kind of one of the most stable ones that he doesn't necessarily like invest in emotionally, but he does like invest in time wise and effort wise. I think like the emotional distance between him and his relationship and his agent makes that an easier one to maintain. And then the one with his wife, his daughter, like, you know, I think maybe he unintentionally keeps those at a greater arm's length because it requires more emotional investment to like do a better job.
Yeah. Good point. Any other character outside of Stephen King that may have their own development shaped by his mom having died in childhood?
She had a pretty strong reaction to that. Seems to be somewhat triggering.
What could be? Could be. I'm actually thinking of something outside of Stephen King. Or along the lines of Netflix series. Anybody here watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah, the House of Dragons, Smeagol has the sister, the one
Oh, that's,
yeah.
let me make sure I got the, that was,
Don Silva's mom died during his birth.
there you go.
Yeah, so. Yeah, it is. It is. No, yeah. Oh, the Tyrion.
Yeah.
His mom. Oh, yeah.
That's the one. And you can see the family constellation as a result.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, Sips actually spices.
His dad hates him.
So, yeah, not an uncommon motif. Anything else with Paul? All right, focus on the.
I feel like she's been signing for a long time because she's like all the medical side, hanging around and like. You know, all the details. And I wonder if she's like, how, whether like, consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah, again, that's key. I'm gonna cheat a little bit. That's key down a little bit more in the book. This was all planned. The road was sabotaged. All right, so she was not. She just didn't happen to be in the right place at the right time. She was a acre farm, and she just so happens to be in the middle of a blizzard in an area where she sees the car going through her. So yes, she knows when he's gonna leave. If not, perhaps manipulated that. And that road is sabotaged. Now, again, I don't know how well traveled that road is, but boy, you better sabotage it when that one car is coming down, that one with 20 cars are. Right, so there was some coordination effort here. And when we kind of know this as well, this is one part that was captured in the film. When Paul leaves the room, we see a side of her picture of him. So she has interacted with him before. I don't think she's gotten that off the internet. I don't think it's something foreign from the internet. Right, because 90, happening, he did it. That level of technology did exist back in 1990. Again, Stephen can make sure that we do not consider that because of the way he makes this happen. It's not a town in which Amazon and eBay exist. So she has stalked him before, and she has stalked him in areas outside of Colorado, right? It's Manhattan based, so it's much more likely that an interaction occurred in the Northeast. Interesting. Anyone else?
I was kind of subscribed by like the spirit and like of like the struggle we can keep up with. Like as the movie discussions, like making like I don't know if they were intentional or unintentional, like slip up. Oh, I was out in the blizzard too. I was like right behind off friends almost like just comments like that, but like allude to the fact that it's super intentional. Like now, where I feel like it's not saying that, so like you wouldn't want them to know that. I don't know.
Any thoughts on that?
I think sometimes reality intrudes on the delusion. And that's what we're seeing in those comments, and like that's just the reality getting in the way.
Yeah, and I think implicit in that, that they're chief delusional, right? Individuals who are operating with a delusion. And because by definition, they're not reality based, are certainly at risk for inconsistencies in the story. Right, so don't dismiss what I think is implied, and that is there's a delusional quality to what's going on here. So if that is the case, and we're beginning the case formulate this, one of the things that I would like to present to you in terms of a 5-step process and getting to the most likely diagnosis could be employed for shelf exams, but I think it's more of a clinical call. Is step one, given the nature of what we're now discussing, if we were to poll 99 undergraduate students, do we think any Rose afflicted with A, a mood anxiety cluster, or B, a psychotic dissociative cluster? What do you think the majority of the 99 undergraduates would say? A or B? Right? If psychotic dissociative is step two, let's arbitrarily agree that we're going to start the discussion with the diagnosis of schizophrenia. It's an arbitrary decision. It's just that we have to choose a starting point, and it should be the common starting point, common error meeting every time we choose B. We will conform to schizophrenia. Step two. Step three. Demonstrate your to me your knowledge of the DSM. So now I want to know the 5 inclusion criteria that define this condition called schizophrenia. Step three.
Like
Pressure. The breath, your pressure.
Say
There's another negative one.
that's a positive one. I'm going to say
Oh,
that's a negative one. Let's say negative. Yeah. So grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior. So those are the 5. As you alluded to, 4 of the 5 are positive symptoms, meaning that there's a pathological presence of something that a baseline should not be. Those positive symptoms include delusions, hallucinations, grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior, disorganized speech, or thought process. Right? Any or all of the above are due to the dysregulation of what neurotransmitter? Increased or decreased? Increased. Where? Don't see the brain. It's a board question. It's a shot question. Mesolimbic tract. Right? Right. Excess dopamine, mesolimbic equals positive pathological presence of something, any of those 4. That a baseline should not be, which of course differentiates from negative, which is the pathological absence of something that should be there. Okay? And any negative symptom, whether it's flat affect, etc., any one suffices for that criterion. When neurotransmitter. Also dopamine. Too high or too low? Too low. Where? Mesocortical tract. Again, know that for the boards. All right. The American Psychiatric Association, the DSM-5 requires 2 of those 5. Does any rule in at this point?
Yes, over to it was episodic, like agitation. I don't know if that If it's episodic, does it count?
Yeah.
Okay, then yeah. she will then.
So and when in doubt, say yes, because it's a mental exercise, right? So when in doubt, say yes. Next step is step three. Step three would be to now appreciate that this condition, schizophrenia, is a diagnosis of exclusion. So now you're going to tell me the 5 conditions as an investigator you're going to look into and rule out in order to continue to avoid the original diagnosis of schizophrenia. 5.
Like condition caused by another direction. Or medication.
Yeah, and very substance. use.
They should always be 1 and 1B.
Are those considered, we're considering those two?
They're 2 separate criteria, but actually in some diagnoses, they're actually related to one.
Primary mood psychotic.
Primary mood, but so that's major depressive episode disorder or bipolar with psychotic features. Good, that's 3. It's affective disorder. 4, good. The final was an autism spectrum disorder. Do we think that Annie Wilkes is afflicted with any of those 5 conditions? Why or not?
I think the sales practice being a cancel, that there's the rain, change how it's offered on.
And the best way to approach this is to ask yourself, do you think there's a significant mood component to the presentation? The answer is no. You can then take away schizoaffective and primary mood disorder. And the differential answer is yes. Let's keep them in. All right, let's keep them in. So if we're going to say that this might be a primary mood disorder because of that scene, we also have to say that we're going to keep in schizoaffective too. Right. So let's derail for just a second. Again, for purposes. A patient that presents with co-occurring mood and psychotic symptoms. Answer A is going to be primary mood disorder with psychotic features. Answer B is going to be schizoaffective disorder. For now, I'm here to C or D say. How do you differentiate A or B? What are you going to look back at the vignette, read closely, and come up with your answer?
When the psychotic features are present, they're only present during disorders, so it's primarily plus psychotic features, and if there's psychotic features in the absence of a disorder, it's not.
It really is that simple. Now, again, in criminal practice, it's not. It's teasing this out can be very difficult. On a board exam, the question writer is not going to come up with a 3-paragraph nothing for you. You're going to have to be provided evidence of one without the other. And of course, that will give you the underlying disorder, whether it's a primary mood or whether it's a primary psychotic disorder named schizoaffective disorder. Right. The only other thing to look for in the DSM that's worth mentioning is the duration of the absence. Because if somebody can, this is more of a clinical call, but it's in the DSM. But if somebody can't get and then they don't, yes, I did have a sustained period where I had psychotic features and I was not depressed and I was not manic. And you ask, well, when you say sustained, how long do you mean? They say a couple hours. What is the duration that is required? Yeah, it's 2 weeks, right? And that just was pulled from the medical literature. So that's the only other thing to consider. That's one of the clinical goals, but it could show that. And again, 2 weeks is how the operation guidelines. All right, so right now we have a working diagnosis of schizophrenia. Cannot definitively rule out schizoaffective disorder versus a primary mood disorder that is severe with psychotic features. Due largely to our observation that we think there is an affective component to Annie's presentation. Okay. Next point is it's more of a mental exercise. So if we were to have hypothetically taken notes, watching Misery, and if you were now going to cross off everything on the notes page that would be explained by anything we just discussed, would there be anything else? If your answer is no, that means we're done. If your answer is yes, there's several things that are highlighted here that observations that I made that are not expressed by schizophrenia, schizoaffective, or primary mood disorder. We have to explain that, and the way we do that is by expanding our differential.
That's-
I was gonna say, I don't, I feel like the attempted murder suicide doesn't really fall into the legal aspect, because I would have expected her to continue doubling down, doubling down. But it almost seems like there's a moment where she confronts reality and can't handle it.
Right?
And expanding on that, with like a few other murders that we've seen from Scrapbook, right? With the nursing student, the baby. Possibly her father, because that's also in Scrapbook functioning.
So, of course, by providing this information, we go back and we want to make sure that it's more difficult part of the clinical interview. But during each of those murders, were there any signs of mania? Was there an elevated expense of irritable mood and related signs? Were there signs of a major depressive episode and psychotic features? Because if the answer is no, then we have to come up with a reason why she attempted murder or actually murdered people, babies. That would not be attributed to a manic episode, a depressed episode, or schizophrenia, right? My gut would say that upon asking, we're probably going to find evidence that everything we just previously discussed was not in place then. So, given that, for academic purposes, let's assume that is true. What else might we consider? Yeah, likely a personality disorder, right? So, what personality disorder do you think is consistent with what's being presented? And why? That personality, yeah. So, antisocial personality disorder has a cardinal trait of blatant disregard for and violation of others' rights, which is clearly, I think, illustrated in the multiple scrapbook clippings that we see. And some using trophies too, which might be a little bit beyond antisocial personality. Now, because we're implicating antisocial personality disorder now as a diagnosis, and what other question do we have for Annie at this time, or maybe even her parents? We know our father's not, but
You know,
right? It is the one disorder, is one personality disorder that does require a diagnosis prior to treatment. Right? Every personality disorder, with the exception of antisocial personality, need to be diagnosed in children. Now, whether you feel comfortable doing that or not is another issue. But every personality disorder except one is diagnosable in children. Antisocial is no lone exception. There, the individual must be 18 years of age old. It's an adult-only illness. As part of that definition, that individual must demonstrate evidence of conduct disorder prior to the age of 15, which then would be the prequel, right? Excuse me, sorry. Any, oh, not the prequel, that's actually the Castle Rock Netflix series, season 2. We don't see her that young. We see her younger, but not that young. Maybe the next set of prequel.
But I will say, potentially order, and the murder of her father happened before she was in nursing school. It could be that I probably went through it like before age of 18. We can't really-
Right. Yeah, no. Right. So, now if she does rule in for conduct disorder prior to the age of 15, antisocial personality disorder would be your most likely diagnosis to be added to everything we previously discussed.
okay. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
This is the way I never really understood about conduct disorder is, and if we were to see a patient presenting with the complete disregard of the rights of others, but they didn't, for whatever reason, we can't get a history, or there was no formal diagnosis, or they didn't get evaluated, or for whatever reason, what do we gain from not allowing ourselves to say personality?
Yeah, one of the things that we have to consider here is that it's consistent with this condition of antisocial personality. If we implemented a treatment plan, there'd be some predictability of prognosis.
Mhm.
That is off the table without any evidence of conduct. Because to remain consistent with the medical literature, the treatment is for the illness, and the illness is defined as someone who has conduct prior to the age of 15. Without that added required diagnosis, prognosis and treatment will take place.
Would you be able to like retroactively?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Evidence, but those were choice, whatever criteria have it.
And as a clinician, like, less for your boards, this again, that's artificial. But as a clinician, I would probably go as suspected. Still have to make the treatment strategies, but then tell the patient that because there is some ambiguity here, we may not have the outcomes that I would expect. In someone who perhaps had this condition called antisocial personality, which requires evidence of conduct prior to the age of 15. Again, we're going with the data. The evidence-based data, and it just doesn't apply if you are without that conduct history.
Not generally the formula.
It's not good anyway. But I mean, sure. Again, consistent with that, albeit in very Hollywood fashion, kind of is consistent with reflected in this movie. It's just unfortunate prognosis is poor. All right, anything else for Annie in terms of signs and symptoms that are not part of antisocial or schizoaffective or primary mood disorder or schizophrenia?
I was definitely tempted to at least consider it like a factitious disorder with some another. I don't think that's really like top of my list, but there was I got like the hint that she loved being the caretaker. It must be a misunderstanding what's going on. I couldn't really totally eliminate that, so I just thought to that for consideration.
Annie is often referred to as angel of death nurse, and that moniker is usually reserved for people who actually do, in fact, make their patients sick, put them in harm's way, only to come in and save them for the exact reason, the secondary being that you just described. I would want to read those articles, and of course, I want to read the court proceedings even closer to see if that in fact is the case. When I first saw this way back in 1990, I had thought that. And certainly, if you watch the video that I posted for you guys, in terms of where this is set up curriculum, I do put her on the same page as Blanca and Kristen's last name right now, the angel of death nurse, because of where this inspiration has come from. The fact that she may have killed her father, and the fact that she did kill the #1 nursing student, so she could become #1, really goes against that. Right, so I think it's a critical consideration. And even though she killed her nursing student for ulterior incentives and reasons, it doesn't mean that there wasn't a factitious component in the murder of those babies. I just want to know more information. Why did she kill them? Where's the motivation?
Well, it's interesting to when she was talking about why she burned it. She had like these religious allegiance with like God told her to, and it's like God's plan. And I wonder if that's the knowledge throughout her murder as well. Something that I was considering was like if you go to the years of doing it, like essentially intrusive thoughts about like God's plan, telling her to be more fulfilled.
And what might be a scene, quite frankly, a very infamous scene in this movie that would support that.
Like, if you know. Like all the junction. Yeah.
More specific. Yes.
She was talking about the penguin as being born into the.
Yeah, sounded something.
Yeah.
Her attention to detail regarding that penguin always facing due south is not consistent with schizophrenia or schizoaffective. It's not explained by a primary mood disorder, and it's not part of antisocial personality. So there's something. Remember when I said that if you want to go to the mental exercise, that penguin is still there. It's not highlighted yet. All right. So obsessive compulsive personality might be something you have to consider as well, which of course could be joined with or could be linked to antisocial personality, because now you're talking about a serial killer. Right? Where antisocial personality is defined through impulsivity. But individuals with this condition that are not impulsive and instead are premeditated certainly could go in a direction different than, and that direction could be labeled as psychopathy, serial killer. I wonder if Paul is her first crush, her first abductee. We don't know. We don't know what the bodies are in. That's something to consider here.
And I think too, like one of the things that Wikipedia did focus on was kind of including other things, and we see that with American, she had all these like accolades, we don't see any sort of anyone in her life.
Yeah, it's cold. It's a cold house. Even as cluttered as it is, not personal, not cozy. It's a farmhouse too, and again, Stephen King, he gives us the facade. It's a cozy town, right? Remember the conversation, the very first person that came to your attention as a group, the constable, the sheriff. The town that he's part of, and I don't know the specifics, but he said, if you want to talk to the handyman, so that's me too. I know, big fishing holes, I mean, but that's the painted picture, that's the facade. But we get a little deeper and we see that what is the true reality of this town is anything but. This is vintage Stephen King.
Even like the turning of that trope of four consonants, becoming like a rom-com kind of thing, for it's like a horror film, right? That's kind of, you see that kind of a lot in like rom-com books, where it's like, oh, the son, they was doing fall in love, right? And then turn it on its head to like, how I'm going to kill you.
There is a storm and it's far out, it's supposed to be cozy, but close inspection, find that cozy in the house. I mean, forget that that's being tortured in bed. I mean, even when you story, find that cozy in the house. Again, there's not all of personal items. Certainly no family myself, those that she murdered in scrapbook. That would not need to touch the coast. All right, we got about 4 minutes left. Any other observation?
I'll have like PTSD or like you're showing like everything on timeline at the end of the video and be very personal.
Definitely a flashback here. There's certainly a strong, so. Very fair. All right, we'll end it here. Just let me know when we're off.